Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. There are cities that are born, grow, and die. And there are cities that become eternal symbols, marked by something deeper than mere stones and records. Babylon is not just an ancient city, it is a code, a riddle that refuses to die. According to accounts passed down through the centuries, it was there, in the land of Shinar, that humanity dared to touch the heavens with bricks and tar. It was there that God, in an act of rupture, confused the languages of men and scattered the peoples across the face of the earth. A punishment, they say. But what if it wasn't? The scriptures speak of an ancient people, descendants of Cush and Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, who founded the first cities of Mesopotamia, including the most enigmatic of them all, Babylon. Men who knew more than they should have, who perhaps carried with them forbidden knowledge. And that is where the true mystery begins. What is the real origin of Babylon? Where did its founders come from? What were they truly trying to build with that tower? Could we be looking at a legacy that traces back to something not entirely human? In this video, we will go far beyond what we've been taught. We will question, investigate, and perhaps unearth a truth many would rather keep buried, like comment, subscribe, and get ready. Because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you think about the origin of civilization. Babylon, a name that echoes through the centuries as a symbol of power, mystery, and grandeur. Located in the south of ancient Mesopotamia, on the banks of the fertile Euphrates River, this city was far more than just an urban settlement. It was the beating heart of a civilization that shaped the history of the Middle East and the ancient world. Its strategic position in the so-called Fertile Crescent transformed Babylon into a vital cultural and political center in the region. From the earliest historical records to its imperial peak, the city exerted profound influence over the Akkadian-speaking peoples, a Semitic linguistic group that dominated much of Mesopotamia for millennia. Throughout its long existence, Babylon was the stage for two of the most remarkable empires of antiquity. The Old Babylonian Empire, established in the 18th century BCE, and the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which flourished during the 7th and 6th centuries BCE. Under different reigns and political systems, the city was constantly reimagined and rebuilt, remaining an urban center of enormous relevance for nearly 2,000 years. Beyond its regional importance, Babylon also served as an administrative capital under the rule of other powerful empires, such as the Achaemenid Persian Empire. Even after its political decline, the city continued to exert significant cultural influence, standing as one of the main hubs of the ancient world until the rise of the Hellenistic period, when it began to lose prominence under expanding Greek control. The legendary origins of the city are tied to enigmatic figures who dwell in both religious imagination and the oral traditions of ancient peoples. According to the scriptures, one of the earliest men connected to the founding of Babylon was Nimrod, a character described as a mighty hunter before the Lord. Nimrod was said to be a descendant of Cush, who in turn was a son of Ham, the son of Noah, and considered the ancestor of many African peoples. According to these accounts, Nimrod established himself in the land of Shinar, a region mentioned in ancient texts as the place where Babylon was built. This region, also identified by the names Shir, or simply as Babylon itself, was originally inhabited by Semitic populations. However, the arrival of Nimrod and his descendants marked a symbolic, and perhaps historical, turning point in the cultural identity of the city, blending African, Semitic, and Sumerian traditions. It is important to note that although Nimrod is often associated with the Sumerians, there is no historical or archaeological consensus about this direct connection. Still, his figure serves as a mythological bridge between the earliest peoples of Mesopotamia and the great empires that would rise along the Euphrates. The earliest known mention of Babylon appears on a clay tablet dated to the reign of Shar-Kali-Shari around 2217 BCE, during the final phase of the Akkadian Empire. At that time, Babylon was little more than a modest-sized village, with primarily religious and cultural functions. It was still far from becoming the grand metropolis that history would later immortalize. Under the rule of the Akkadian Empire, the first to politically unify the various Akkadian-speaking populations, both Semitic and Sumerian, Babylon began to gain prominence as a strategic point within the network of Mesopotamian cities. The influence of the empire allowed the city to participate in a shared culture based on cuneiform writing, polytheistic religion, and the earliest known legal codes in human history. However, with the collapse of the Akkadian Empire, regional stability was drastically shaken. Various peoples began vying for control of Mesopotamia. One such group was the Gutians, a population originating from the mountains of present-day Iran, possibly related to the ancient Persians. For several decades, the Gutians dominated southern Mesopotamia, imposing their authority over cities such as Ur, Lagash, and Babylon itself. The Gutian rule, however, was unstable and relatively short-lived. Soon, a new political force emerged, the Third Dynasty of Ur, also known as the Sumerian Renaissance. This dynasty succeeded in reunifying much of Mesopotamia and re-established control over Babylon, reintegrating it into a more centralized and organized political system. It was only a few centuries later, with the rise of a semi-nomadic people known as the Amorites, that Babylon truly began to stand out as an independent city-state. Around the 19th century BCE, it broke free from foreign domination and began to write its own chapter in history. The turning point came with Hammurabi, one of the most renowned rulers of antiquity. In the 18th century BCE, Hammurabi established what is now known as the First Babylonian Empire. Under his reign, Babylon transformed from an emerging city into the center of a vast empire whose influence extended across almost all of Mesopotamia. It was during this period that the name Babylon came to represent not just a city, but the entire southern region of Mesopotamia. The ancient city of Ur, which had served for centuries as the spiritual and cultural center of the south, was gradually surpassed. Babylon now emerged as the new sacred, political, and economic hub of the region. Hammurabi's reign was marked by significant administrative, legal, and architectural advancements. His famous Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest known sets of written laws, reflected the complex social structure of the time and laid down rules that would influence future generations. The city began to transform into a true model of urban organization, featuring monumental temples, imposing palaces, and well-structured commercial avenues. Yet glory would not last forever. After Hammurabi's death, his son Samsu-iluna inherited the throne, but failed to maintain the same level of stability and prestige. The empire began to weaken under growing external pressures and internal revolts. Peoples such as the Elamites, Scythians, and Assyrians began to invade and take control of various parts of the region, plunging Babylon into a long period of instability. Even so, the city was never forgotten. Despite destructions and reconstructions, Babylon continued to be viewed as a symbol of ancient power, and it was precisely this aura that enabled its rebirth centuries later with the rise of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Between 626 and 539 BCE, Babylon once again became the capital of a powerful empire. Led by rulers such as Nabopolassar and his son Nebuchadnezzar II, the Neo-Babylonian Empire transformed the city into a spectacular urban center, adorned with hanging gardens, colossal walls, and grand temples. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are shrouded in one of antiquity's greatest mysteries. Widely considered one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, they were believed to have been built around 600 BCE in the very heart of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The grandeur attributed to this structure was so impressive that, according to later descriptions, the gardens appeared to float on elevated terraces, as if nature itself had been shaped to defy gravity. Towering trees, palm groves, and exotic flowers would have grown on multiple levels, nourished by an ingenious irrigation system that carried water from the Euphrates River to the top of the platforms, a remarkable feat of engineering for its time. However, despite the fame that has endured for centuries, a fundamental question remains. Did the Hanging Gardens really exist? No contemporary Babylonian cuneiform text explicitly mentions the construction or existence of such a wonder. The references we have today come mostly from Greek and Roman historians such as Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, who wrote centuries after the supposed period of construction. This absence of records in the official Babylonian archives fuels the hypothesis that the gardens, as described in classical sources, may have been idealized or even confused with another monumental structure in a different city of the empire, such as Nineveh. The history of Babylon, however, goes far beyond the mystery of the gardens. After reaching its peak under King Nebuchadnezzar II, who transformed the city into one of the most magnificent metropolises of the ancient world, the empire began to decline. The conquest by the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, marked the beginning of a long succession of foreign dominations over the region. The city was incorporated into the Achaemenid Empire, gradually losing its political and cultural significance. It then came under the control of the Parthians, who ruled vast areas of the Near East, and later the Romans, whose interest in Mesopotamia was more strategic than cultural. In later periods, peoples such as the Khatanids, an Arab group that settled in parts of Mesopotamia, also ruled over the area. Eventually, the arrival of the Muslims during the Islamic expansion brought new religious, political, and social dynamics to the ancient city. Even so, despite so many conquests and transformations, Babylon never again reached the prominence of earlier centuries. The city, once a symbol of wealth, power, and innovation, slowly emptied, its colossal structures succumbing to time, neglect, and the desert sands. The last known mention of active habitation in Babylon dates to the 11th century, when historical records refer to a small village called Babel, located where the majestic metropolis once stood. This final fragment of Babylon's urban history illustrates how even the greatest centers of civilization can, over time, be reduced to mere shadows of their former glory, remembered more for their past splendor than their presence in the modern world. At the height of its existence, Babylon was recognized as the largest city in the world during at least two distinct periods, between 1770 and 1670 BCE, and again between 612 and 320 BCE. In both cases, its population and territorial reach surpassed that of any other known urban center. Some estimates suggest that Babylon may have been the first city in history to surpass the remarkable mark of 200,000 inhabitants, a staggering number by ancient standards. This population density, combined with its monumental architecture and cultural influence, makes Babylon one of the most important landmarks in human civilization. When we speak of the name Babylon, we encounter a fascinating origin that spans centuries of cultural and linguistic transformations. The name we know today, Babylon, is a Latin adaptation of the Greek Babylon. However, the deeper root of the name lies in Akkadian, an ancient Semitic language of Mesopotamia, in which the city was called Bab-ilu. The translation of this name can be understood as Gate of God or Gate of the Gods, an expression loaded with religious and cultural symbolism. In Akkadian, Bab means gate, and Ilu means God. Thus, Bab-ilu refers to a kind of divine entry point, a gate connecting the human world to the supernatural. When ancient Babylonians wrote the city's name in cuneiform, they used the logogram Ka for gate, followed by Dingir, D, which represents God, and the determinative Ki, indicating that the term referred to a specific place. This combination of symbols reveals the idea that Babylon was not merely a city, but a meeting point between humans and deities. This Babylonian expression has interesting parallels in the ancient Sumerian language. The Sumerian version of the name is Ka-Dingir Raki, where Ka still means gate, Dingir means God, and Ra indicates possession, suggesting that the gate belongs to the gods. The ending Ki is the locative determinative, meaning the term refers to a specific place or city, a sacred location. This connection with divinity, was clearly present in the Babylonian worldview and is recorded in contemporary cuneiform texts. However, the etymology of Babylon has undergone some reinterpretations over time. In the 19th century, the scholar Archibald Sayce proposed that Bab-ilu might be a Semitic translation of an original Sumerian name, one that the Babylonians adapted to explain their city's origin. But in 1955, the renowned Assyriologist I.J. Gelb offered a new interpretation. He suggested that the original name of Babylon was Babila, a term of unknown origin and meaning, although he noted that similar names were used in other cities of the Sumerian region. Gelb argued that over time, the Sumerian name was transformed into Bab-ilim in Akkadian, and that the connection to the Gate of the Gods was a later Semitic folk etymology, rather than a reflection of the name's original meaning. The name Babylon also underwent phonetic transformations over the centuries. During the Third Dynasty of Ur, for instance, the name appears to have been pronounced as Baba or Babar, later evolving into Babbur and finally into Babbil. This shift from an R to an L sound is common in Semitic languages and reflects the natural changes that occur over time in spoken language. The first clear and documented mention of Babylon appears in texts from King Shar-Kali-Shari, which use the form Ka Dingir Ra-Ki, indicating that the association with the Gate of the Gods was already widely known during his time. Babylon also holds a significant role in biblical tradition, especially in the book of Genesis, where it is associated with the concept of confusion. This comes from the Hebrew verb balbal, meaning to confuse, and is linked to the story of the Tower of Babel, in which humans attempted to build a tower that reached the heavens. In response, God confused their languages and scattered them across the earth. This idea of confusion became embedded in the word Babel, now often used to describe incoherent speech, although there is no direct linguistic connection between the name of the city and this concept. In Semitic languages, Babylon also appears in various spellings, such as Bavel in Hebrew, Bel in Phoenician, and Baal in Syriac. In Arabic, the city is called Babil, pronounced Bel. Babylon's influence extended beyond its own territory. In some ancient texts, the name Babylon was even used to refer to other cities or territories under its control, such as Bipa, a city under Babylonian influence, or even Nineveh, which was briefly occupied by the Babylonians after its sack. Over time, various spellings of the name Babylon emerged. During the Old Babylonian Empire, it was common to find forms such as TNT or TK, which became more prevalent in the late 2nd and early 1st millennium BCE. Other variants, such as EKI, also appeared during the 1st millennium BCE. The name Babylon, therefore, is not just a geographic designation, but one rich in cultural, religious, and linguistic meaning. It reflects the grandeur of a city seen as a gateway to the divine, and its transformation over time is a testament to the political, social, and linguistic shifts in the region. With its historical and symbolic weight, Babylon continues to fascinate scholars and history enthusiasts today, remaining one of the greatest legacies of ancient Mesopotamia. According to the Bible, specifically the book of Genesis, we are introduced to the figure of Nimrod, a mysterious and influential man who likely founded, or at least ruled over, the city of Babylon, which was already inhabited by ancient Akkadian or Semitic peoples, descendants of Cush. The story of Nimrod is told in a compelling way, highlighting his strength and courage, which made him a notable leader in his time. Genesis chapter 10 describes Nimrod as follows. Cush fathered Nimrod, who was the first powerful man on earth. He was the mightiest of hunters before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom included Babel, Erech, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From there he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, and Calah. It is interesting to note that while Nimrod ruled over Babel, the text does not state that he founded the city. Instead, the Bible describes Babel as part of the kingdom he built. and his presence there was so significant that it became one of his centers of power. The city of Akkad, Ade, is also mentioned as part of his domain, but like Babel, there is no explicit mention that Nimrod founded these cities. Both were originally Semitic territories, inhabited by descendants of Cush. What we can infer is that Nimrod, known for his hunting skills and great power, expanded his rule over these cities and territories, consolidating his empire. Over time, he became a historically significant figure, founding other major cities in Mesopotamia, such as Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, and Calah in Assyria. Besides being a mighty hunter, as described in Scripture, Nimrod is often seen as a figure representing the birth of great empires in the ancient world. His name, associated with strength and power, carries symbolic meaning. He was the first to rule over a vast region, from Babel to Assyria, laying the foundation for kingdoms that would deeply influence later civilizations. Nimrod's expansion can also be seen as part of a broader process of unifying the various Semitic tribes and peoples in the region. He not only founded new cities, but brought together areas that, though culturally distinct, came under unified governance, helping form the basis for the great civilizations of Mesopotamia. And so, according to the Bible, Nimrod becomes one of the first great rulers, a symbol of strength and courage, and one of the most important names in ancient history. Although the biblical text does not clearly state that he founded Babylon, his rule over the city and surrounding lands certainly marked a pivotal moment of transformation in the region. Thank you to everyone who watched this far. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like and share your thoughts in the comments. And of course, if you're interested in more videos on the origins of cities, kingdoms, and other historical topics, let me know. I'll be bringing more content on this and many other fascinating subjects. God bless you all, and see you soon.